I remember walking into my first college class, Intro to Biology. I was nervous, and then I was confused. You see, I was expecting to learn about cells and DNA, but the professor instead got up there and started talking about water. At first, I thought, seriously? I already know what water is. But by the end of that class, my mind was completely blown. Today, while I explore a brand new Minecraft world, just like college was for me, I want to share that story with you, because water is way more incredible than you think. I'm also going to talk a little bit about my first experiences with college, what I learned, what I would do differently, and what made it such a special and unique experience, just like that first class was. So if you're ready, I'm ready too. Sit back, relax, and enjoy. So let's start with the basics. Obviously, we know that water is important to drink. You get thirsty if you don't, and it can really affect your health if you're dehydrated. But more than that, water is a solvent, and it's actually called the universal solvent. By the way, I think that's a pretty cool title to have, universal solvent. Oh my gosh. And that basically means that water can dissolve a lot of different substances. And it helps facilitate processes that are essential to life. It lets us carry nutrients throughout our bodies, it helps remove waste, and it's a medium for chemical reactions to occur in. So that's the first thing. Water is a universal solvent. That was the first point that my professor made, and so far, seemed pretty easy. Water dissolves a lot of stuff. Okay, that makes sense. Doesn't sound too surprising. Something that was surprising, though, was how I felt after the excitement of the first couple weeks of college wore off. I felt so homesick. I knew that I wasn't that far away from my family and friends, and I knew they were still an important aspect of my life, but all of a sudden, I'm just not seeing them every day. I used to live with my parents. I saw them all the time throughout the day, and in high school, my friends and I were in the same classes. We were in one place for 8 hours a day, 5 days a week. Now, of course, that was kind of different during the pandemic, and in many ways, it was even more than 8 hours back then, but that's probably something for another video. My point is that suddenly I went from constantly being in the company of these important people in my life to now seeing them every once in a while or on the phone. They felt so far away, and it hurt. I was homesick so often. Now, this might vary from person to person. There's definitely a lot of newfound freedom with college, and I know a lot of people that love being away from home. Maybe they weren't so fond of their hometown or didn't miss their friends or family that much. I don't know. I wasn't one of those people. I definitely enjoyed the novelty of college, and the new experiences and responsibilities made it exciting, but I also cared a lot about the people in my support system back at home, and I was somewhat surprised with exactly how much that being away kind of affected me. I didn't know that it was so important to me, and there is nothing wrong with that, by the way. I think it's actually such a privilege to have people in your life that are so important to you that you miss them when you're away. So my advice pertaining to that, if you're someone considering going to college or deciding between different journeys and paths to take some time to really consider and try to figure out what's important to you, and use that when you pick which factors you want to base your decision on. I think you can make friends just about anywhere you go, but having a reliable support system is so good to have, and you might not notice it until you're in a situation where you don't have one, or the one you did have is harder to reach. Also, just be ready to be more intentional with your relationships. You'll have a lot more control over your schedule and probably even a lot more free time, but if you don't make the effort to reach out and make yourself available to the people in your life, it'll be a lot harder to stay in touch. I'm sure that we might all at some point realize that we probably have a friend or two that anytime we talk, it's just catching up, because it's been so long since the last time you talked. Be ready for that. People get busy, and you can't control how available a person will be for you, but also know that could happen. Decide if that's something you're okay with, and if you don't want to cause it from your end, be ready to be intentional with your time and make yourself available for the people important in your life. So that's my first life lesson that I kind of learned in college. The second water lesson I learned was about cohesion and adhesion. Basically, water sticks to stuff, and it's because of those two properties, cohesion and adhesion. Cohesion refers to water molecules attracting one another, sticking to one another, and adhesion is water's ability to stick to other materials that aren't water. Cohesion, for example, is responsible for surface tension, or the tendency of a liquid surface to resist rupture when placed under tension or stress. That's why you can fill a glass of water a little bit higher than the brim. That's because of cohesion. Adhesion, on the other hand, is like when water droplets stick to a window, or when dewdrops hang out on leaves or grass. By the way, I don't know if I'm the only one, but I adore dew. There's something about going on a walk early in the morning and seeing all the dew on the grass, and the air feels so fresh and clean, and I love it. Let me know in the comments if you feel the same way. By the way, the cohesive nature of water is because of its polarity. Remember, water is H2O, which means 2 hydrogens and 1 oxygen. And oxygen has a larger positive charge in its nucleus than hydrogen. It has more protons, and that causes it to pull on electrons more strongly than hydrogen. That makes it electronegative. In water, the oxygen and hydrogens are covalently bonded, which means that they share electrons with one another. Even though that's the case, oxygen's electronegativity causes it to pull on those electrons a little more and keeps them around itself a bit more than the hydrogens. This causes an uneven distribution of electrons in the water molecule, and oxygen actually becomes partially negative while the two hydrogens become partially positive. This essentially creates distinct poles on the molecule, especially with its bent shape, which we can talk more about molecule geometry in another video. This unequal sharing of electrons causes water to be what we call polar. Going off of that, we know that negative and positive charges attract. So when we imagine multiple water molecules, each having partial negative and positive charges at the oxygens and hydrogens, we can imagine that they might coordinate with each other. The partial negative on the oxygen in one water molecule would attract the partial positive charges on the hydrogens in another molecule. This interaction is referred to as hydrogen bonding. Alright, so that got a little bit more complicated. That's what I was thinking during the lesson, so I'll go back to talking about college. One big challenge for me was food. I'm vegetarian, I have been my whole life, so dining options were quite limited, especially when it came to finding healthier food. This wasn't a problem for me at first. I was more than content with eating my dining hall's cheese pizza and fries every single day. It felt like freedom, to be honest, but then I soon realized how much it was affecting my health. I constantly felt tired, my sleep wasn't good, and soon the food was sitting like a rock in my stomach. And I think this was the first time I really began to think seriously about self-care. The moment something that was really good for me, home-cooked food, the moment that went away and I realized how much I had taken for granted was when I began to think about other aspects of my life I never gave much importance to. I started prioritizing sleep, trying to get as much as my schedule would allow. I made myself eat the salads that they had at the dining hall instead of going straight to the junk food. And I started one habit that I really love and keep doing to this day. So growing up, I would always just eat while I did something. When I was young and I was playing outside, I wouldn't even want to eat, but my mom would make sure that I ate something. So even then, I would ask her to wrap up the food in like a napkin so I could eat while I played, just holding it with one hand and doing whatever else with the other. When I got older, instead of eating while I played, I started to eat while I studied, and that got more difficult. Suddenly I'm older, my parents pay more attention to when I tell them I'm not hungry. And when I'm on campus, my parents aren't there to remind me to eat either. But I would also get really immersed in whatever I was doing or studying at the time, and I wouldn't feel hungry because I was distracted. I was focusing on something else. A lot of the time, I wouldn't notice I was hungry until I finished whatever I was doing and realized, oh wait, I'm starving. I would sometimes go throughout the day on one meal, and that's obviously not very good. So I decided to be more intentional with my food. Now, if it's time to eat something, I try to stop doing whatever I was doing and just focus on the food, especially so if I'm studying. I just don't want to give my brain any reason to associate study with food. Studying is good, but everyone's got to eat too. They're separate things. I think it's helped me develop a better relationship with food, and more than that, it's helped me as a kind of non-negotiable way to incorporate a break into whatever I'm working on. I'm the type of person that whenever I get really invested into something or find a good groove with it, I will be at it for hours without any breaks. Now don't get me wrong, it's a great way to get stuff done, but it's also important to get up, stretch your legs, drink water, fix your posture, talk to people. Don't isolate yourself in your room just because you got super invested with something. It's okay to take a minute to eat, and it's okay to give yourself a break and get back to what you were doing with even more energy. Going back to water, a third property which makes it so perfect for us is its heat capacity, which means that it can absorb a lot of heat without its temperature skyrocketing. It takes a lot of energy to raise the temperature of water by even a degree, and this is why our oceans can actually moderate our climate, and it's essential for keeping our bodies at just the right temperature. Imagine if water heated up too fast. It's a hot day, you step outside, and all of the water in your body immediately began to boil. That would be a world of trouble, and life as we know it would be a whole lot more chaotic. A benefit of this heat capacity is that water has a high heat of vaporization, which means that it takes a significant amount of energy to transform it from a liquid to a gas. And that's mainly because of the strong hydrogen bonds between water molecules, which we talked about earlier. And something I love is that animals have evolved a way to take advantage of this, and it actually has to do with sweat. Because sweat is mostly made of water, it takes up excess heat from the body and evaporates away. This helps us cool down. It's called evaporative cooling. So, because water takes the right amount of energy to change its state and temperature, it gives us the sense of stability and balance, to the point where we've adapted ways to take advantage of this property. And this idea of balance isn't just science, it's something I learned the hard way in college. This is the last thing I'll share before getting into the final and personally my favorite property of water, but I think it's pretty important. In my first year of college, I was so eager to experience everything that I ended up joining something like 11 clubs. That was pretty excessive, and I soon learned that trying to do everything at once was a great way to end up doing nothing significant at all. Don't spread yourself too thin. Now, thankfully, I knew pretty quickly that being in 11 clubs was just way too much. It doesn't take a genius to know that. But oh my god, when I tell you, I got so much time back when I finally decided to cut down on my commitments and really focus in on the ones that mattered the most to me. Naturally, I think you can make a lot more significant progress if you chose maybe 2 or 3 things that are really important to you and dedicate a lot of time to those as opposed to a half-hearted effort with a whole bunch of things. Don't trick yourself into feeling productive, and as hard as it is, don't let the feeling of FOMO dictate your life. You have your own interests, you have your own passions. Do right by yourself and don't sacrifice those without a moment's consideration. Alright, so we made it to the end, and I saved the best one for last. This is what really kind of blew my mind, because I never thought of it in such a way. Water is less dense as a solid than it is as a liquid. I mean, think about a glass of water with some ice cubes in it. The ice cubes float, right? That's because the solid state of water, ice, is less dense than the liquid water. And this is because the molecules form a crystal lattice, with each molecule forming hydrogen bonds with its neighbors. This goes back to the polarity piece. When there's less energy to kind of override the effects of those positive and negative poles, they orient themselves differently. And this leads to a more open, less dense structure than liquid water. The reason this is so important is that it allows aquatic life to continue living during the winter. This prevents ponds and lakes and oceans from freezing solid completely. If our oceans froze from the bottom up, life would have never had the chance to evolve or become what it is today. And I just think that's beautiful. It just works. So, whether it's the water that's in your body right now, or the water throughout our planet, there's no denying its importance. My first day of college taught me that sometimes the most ordinary things can be absolutely extraordinary. Thanks for joining me on this journey through science and life. If you enjoyed the video, please consider giving it a like, and subscribe if you want to see more. Please share your thoughts in the comments. Thank you so much for watching.